Nigeria has slashed crude oil losses by 50.2% in just 7 months, a development that points to improved security and regulatory oversight. Yet, with over 2 million barrels still lost within the same period, concerns linger about how far Nigeria must go to fully secure its resources. On the other hand, tensions in the midstream and downstream segments are brewing as NUPENG threatens to resume strike over a dispute with Dangote Refinery. It's clear the sector is walking a fine line. Progress on one side, disruption on the other. The stakes for Nigeria's energy future could not be higher. To unpack this, I am joined by Temitope Kolade, Associate Director, Oil, Gas and Power at Andersen Nigeria. Thank you so much, Doc, for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Perchstone.
And of course, I believe that during the course of this conversation, I'll also be joined by Dr. Tolu Aderemi, partner, Perchstone Graeys. But let me begin with you. Now, slashing crude oil losses by 50.2% surely is music to your ears. But looking at the numbers, the country lost 2.04 million barrels of crude in 7 months, and that averages 9,600 barrels per day. Doesn't that signal to you that Nigeria has a long way to go, irrespective of, the fact that that has been slashed by 50%?
Well, thank you very much for the question. I think we should celebrate the wins, no matter how small they might appear. Again, just like you've raised that concern, comparing the whole year figure of 4.1 million barrels to the figures for 7 months, it's like a slight mismatch. And I think that it's only fair that we'll wait it out till the end of the year to have a proper comparison of what percentage loss is really being tracked. And again, there are concerns, but I think if we are to focus on the good sides, we would say that judging from the fact that this is coming from the NUPENG itself, a regulatory agency, there is some institutional authority that they do have, and we should give them credits for some of that work that they're doing. And of course, the fact that this story is also reported consistently across multiple sources. So we should give them some sort of kudos for doing this. But like I said earlier, looking at a 7-month performance versus a 12-month performance may not exactly give us the exact picture in terms of looking at the data. And so we may say at the moment that, yes, it's not exactly 50.2% drop because there is a mismatch in the values we're comparing.
Absolutely, especially when you look at the fact that what we are comparing is over 4 million. So you might want to wait it out, and then at the end of the year, you can have your comparison. Thank you so much for also pointing that out. Now, away from that, you talked about the fact that there are other concerns. I would like you to speak on these concerns. What are they?
Okay, yeah. So particularly, we might also want to clearly state what exactly are we referring to when we say we've reduced losses by 50.2%. Are we talking about losses with respect to metering? The report talks about metering, for instance. It talks about oil theft. Are we also talking about vandalism? Are we talking about spillage? Are we talking about illegal refining? So it's important to really know what exactly we are looking at per time. And so far, when we look at losses within that sector, it may make some sense for us to then hear from operators, hear from third-party verifiers that this is exactly what their experiences are beyond what the regulator is saying. Because again, we agree that from a political standpoint, there could be some incentives for the regulator to emphasize some progress and in certain ways, which is why we may also be seeing something that is not exactly aligned with what we expect in terms of the numbers and the percentage reduction that we should expect. So in looking at it, clearly there is that sense of, can we check whether it's just metering errors, for instance, that we're able to correct and we're able to now measure perfectly that is giving us this so-called improvement, or is it a case of real and sustainable progress that has been made in terms of maybe theft and real theft, and of course decrease in theft. So all of those things are important so that we know what exactly we are measuring and what is being reported. And like I said, the input of operators and third-party verifiers is very critical in having reliability with respect to data that is being pushed out.
Right. Now, looking at the numbers that we have, can we compare them to what is obtainable in other oil-producing countries? Because I want to believe that before you sort of, roll out the drums, you also have to look at what's obtainable in other climes.
Yes, indeed. I think it's always good to have those sort of comparison and benchmarks against what happens in other parts of the world. But again that we typically would have these issues in some parts of the world like ours, where security is a major issue. So again, if we are to compare, we need to compare apples for apples. Are we comparing Angola and Mozambique with Nigeria, for instance? And yes, we may say we're making good progress, but do we then say, oh, beyond that, we want to see what is happening in other places where it's more developed, the security issues are more, reliable and stable. And so we may not be celebrating ourselves just yet. But if we're comparing ourselves with peers within Africa, we may say, yes, indeed, we're making some good progress, because security has typically been a big issue when we look at what's happening in those parts of the world, and especially because a major source of revenue in this part of the world, Nigeria in particular, comes from this oil-dependent economy. So you would find that even when government is trying to survive, getting so much from crude oil exports and all, there are also non-state actors that are seeing how they can operate within that sector as well and get their share of the pie, albeit illegally. And so that constraint becomes higher in this part of the world compared to other parts where they have a more diversified economy, and there is not so much pressure either from the state or from non-state actors from getting so much from what's happening within the crude oil sector.
Well, that's quite interesting. Thank you so much. I don't know if Dr. Tolu can hear me now. Dr. Tolu Aderemi, can you hear me? All right, I guess we still have issues connecting with him. So let me continue with you. We cannot ignore the data, as it shows there has been, a steady decline since 2022, since the 2021 high, right? Now, let's look at how the federal government has been able to achieve this and, maybe how to sustain the momentum.
Yeah. So if you're to look at it from the point of what they've done differently, we know that the leader of the NNPCL before now was on a campaign trail against oil theft. NUPRC would also report to us that they've done quite a bit in terms of sophisticated metering and better surveillance of what's happening on the oil field. So that would be some progress. And we also know that from an historical point of view, the government had hired some private actors to ensure that they help monitor the coastlines and deal with the sort of theft that is happening for crude. And so what we can say is that some of those activities and those steps are beginning to yield some results, and we can expect that if we continue to see that progress, and it will become something that we can say indeed that maybe it's sustainable over time. But beyond that is then to say that, are there concerns that there could be a revert if what we are seeing is dependent on who is there as the leader of the NUPRC, for instance, or who the president is at the moment? Do we have a system to continue to ensure some checks and balances, and we don't have people that are supposed to be monitoring the successes and, of course, the sort of security architecture that has been provided and surveillance that we have over time? I think by and large, there is that need for an handshake between a system monitoring devices, right, that are basically institutionalized, and it's not a case of who the personalities are with respect to monitoring progress when it comes to securing our resources for crude oil. So when we get to that point, then we can say reliably that it becomes sustainable when we are able to say that indeed it's not just about people, but it's about the system that works, it's about the devices that we put in place, it's about having proper surveillance systems that ensure that whoever is flouting the rules will be dealt with severely and in the right manner.
Well, I like what you just said, but that reminds me of the fact that we've heard of, the 21 gazetted regulations, and of the 21 in the oil and gas sector, we know at least 2 of them are geared towards security, security actually, and transparency in product tracking. And that, of course, will help shore up our numbers, reduce losses, and increase profitability. However, can we look at gas flaring and how well the nation is harnessing its gas potential? I mean, with the gazetted regulations for gas flaring, how is it going now? What are your expectations from it?
Well, if you think about what's happening with respect to gas operations, I would say that indeed there are lots of activities with respect to what operators are trying to do now. Starting from the fact that we even have a Petroleum Industry Act that recognizes not just the crude resources, but also the gas resources. I think it becomes very reasonable for every operator out there to say that, yes, the licenses I have to operate within this field covers not just the crude oil, but also the gas. And so they're becoming more responsible for the gas commercialization, and that's in a way is helping them take a step further. And like you've also pointed out, there are those policies that have been rolled out by the government to ensure that there is more focus on what's happening with respect to the harnessing of our gas resources. And so what we're seeing is a pickup of activities with respect to gas operations within the sector. And are we going to see immediate results? Not exactly, because these are capital-intensive projects that take time to mature. And so we should expect that in a couple of, months to years from now, we'll begin to see the results of these policies in terms of how much more gas we begin to produce as a country.
Right. Now, what seems to you like a near-perfect blueprint that can help the nation harness its vast gas reserves to drive economic growth and development? We know we have the Decade of Gas plan, which is, of course, ongoing. But talk to us about what you think.
Well, in terms of what we would see in the next couple of months, I would say that maybe in 18 months to 5 years from now, we'll begin to see that in terms of domestic availability of gas, there is going to be some progress. We also need to remind ourselves of the CNG initiative of the president, right, which is basically to ensure that we have autos now running on hybrid systems to ensure that they can as well just have gas running those vehicles. So I think that also helps, right, in terms of creating a market for the gas production. The other aspect of it is that we also have the export market that is ready to take on this gas. From Nigeria. We have Total, for instance, signed a new deal together with some other operators and the NNPCL to ensure that they develop gas. So I would say that in the next couple of, say, 18 months to 2 years, we begin to see real results from that angle, and we'll see a lot of production of gas that would materialize into some bigger revenue for the country.
Okay, now away from this particular conversation, let's move on to, the story that broke yesterday. It seems another strike is imminent in Nigeria's midstream and downstream oil sector because NUPENG has accused Dangote of reneging on the agreements reached on Tuesday. Are you bothered by that?
Well, I'm bothered. But again, I'm not too bothered. And the reason is because we know that there is an agreement that has been reached. And the fact that the government, representatives were part of that agreement also speaks to something that there should be some credibility to the conversations that were aired and reported at the same time. So I would say that, well, we would see some things that appear to be some sort of crisis looming, but I expect that they will be properly managed in a couple of months. If you think about the fact that we also have a president that seemed to always be proactive in terms of dealing with issues like these and having good negotiation skills, right? I think that the parties will come to a round table and have their differences ironed out in a bit.
But what do you make of NUPENG's accusation? They are saying that, tanker drivers have had to remove NUPENG stickers from their trucks. Do you think that negates the principle of the agreement that they had, looking at the fact that the agreement was that people are free to join any union they want to join?
Thank you very much. And I mean, again, if you look at that, you will also then look at the report from Dangote calling that a cheap blackmail, right? And I do think that either party have their reasons for standing their grounds on what the issues are. However, we look very closely, it would appear that there is nothing like an agreement that says, oh, put stickers on the trucks or don't put the stickers. So I think that the mere fact that stickers are being removed does not necessarily mean that Dangote is reneging on its agreement to agree with a position of a law that, I mean, those tanker drivers and other contractors can indeed, or those other employees can indeed be unionized, right? It could be a case where Dangote is just saying, you know what, removal of stickers is not anti-union. In our view, it's not even initiated by us, or maybe it's for security reasons or some other reasons. The vehicles don't belong to the drivers. So there could be several reasons adduced for that. I think that there is a time frame that has been provided starting from the night to the 22nd of September to ensure that the unionization is completed. And until then, I think that each party will need to tread softly and work with the agreement that they've reached at the round table.
Well, they're just placing, their members on red alert. So, I mean, if anything happens and it feels like Dangote has actually reneged, they'll definitely just, go on ahead and get the strike. All right. Okay. So before we close, let me just ask you this final question. I know I haven't spoken to you about the dispute between the two parties, but where do you stand? We'll close on that. If you can do that in 30 seconds, I'll be so glad.
Well, I stand in the middle. I stand as a neutral person, and I think whatever we want as Nigerians is that we don't want hiccups with respect to the supply chain for petroleum products. And so the parties need to come together and agree and ensure that we continue to have a proper flow of petroleum products and serve Nigerians right. That's where I stand.
All right, thank you so much, Temitope Kolade, Associate Director, Oil, Gas and Power, Andersen Nigeria, for your time on the show today.
Thanks for having me.